If life is full of so many beautiful moments we have the opportunity to enjoy, why can it sometimes feel like all of our time is spent in fulfilling boring, mandatory, mundane, and draining obligations? And how can we make sure we aren't missing out on all that life has to offer? In 2016, I came across a video on YouTube in which writer and blogger Tim Urban gave a TED Talk entitled "Inside the Mind of a Master Procrastinator." Being a teenager who constantly took opportunities to prioritize hanging out with my family or friends, playing video games, going shopping, and watching TV over doing her homework or studying, I felt that this content was quite relatable to me. In a comedic and simplistic way, Tim Urban perfectly summarized the emotional roller coaster associated with procrastinating important tasks. He emphasized that deadlines play a key role in inciting deep guilt, which leads to last-minute productivity. If you haven't watched his TED Talk yet, I highly recommend you check it out. 7 years later, and just about 2 weeks ago, I once again stumbled upon this video I felt was made for me, and it seems that it spoke to many others in that way too. Today, Urban's talk has over 55.5 million views, 1.8 million likes, and is flooded with comments on YouTube where many have pointed out how procrastination has affected their lives. While I still felt that Urban's video was insightful, reassuring, and motivating, my experience watching his TED Talk as a young adult was much different from how I felt first watching it as a teenager.
Oh, but tonight's Tuesday night!
Somehow, and strangely, I felt that I could no longer relate to being a procrastinator. This may seem odd because I'm sure many of us have related to the typical procrastinator persona too many times to believe that any of us could possibly be non-procrastinators, as Urban puts it in his video. It may surprise you, but the paradoxical rabbit hole I went down in trying to understand whether or not I can qualify as a non-procrastinator may involve the evaluation of experiences and time management skills I almost guarantee anyone else could relate to. I'll start off with my own story. After a chaotic first year of undergrad where I demonstrated no academic discipline and did just enough to get by, I realized my work ethic in school needed a major upgrade. Starting from my second year of undergrad, I had stopped studying for tests last minute or starting assignments the night before. I constantly spent my time in the school library, woke up early every morning to study, would read extra material in the textbook, complete lessons and homework before they were taught or assigned, and did practice test after practice test. I utilized concentration tools like the Pomodoro method to make sure I stayed on task while doing my work. While watching a YouTube video on studying tips, I learned that studying in the exact same spot every day may help in achieving focus faster. Soon after, I began showing up to the library every morning before 8:30 so I could claim the same cubicle for the day. I would spend the entire day in the library and leave in the dark of the night. Weekends were not an exception. Thanksgiving was not an exception either, and my ultra-focused studying on Thanksgiving Monday 2019 resulted in me getting locked in the library because I didn't realize the library had closed. I became so disciplined in my time management approach for studying and was determined to always stay ahead of deadlines so I would never have to procrastinate on my tasks. I did everything it took to prevent myself from getting sent down the path of procrastination once more. Similar habits have now overflowed into my work ethic as a graduate student who is currently working on a research-based project. My entire life is in the lab, collecting data, or on my laptop, analyzing data, and a Sunday is just as busy as a Monday. I don't have time to take a lunch on Tuesdays or Fridays since that's when I do my full-day lab experiments, and on Thursdays and Wednesdays, I have to put a dent into one of these 7 other lab projects I have going on. Not to mention, I need to read the literature for 12 different problems I need to solve for my project. I have to work on writing so I can be prepared for that conference that's coming up. I just got several new emails I need to respond to, a new task someone just asked me to complete today, which I don't have time for, dinner planned with my best friend after 47 business days, and that meeting to prepare for. Well, maybe I can move some stuff to tomorrow and stay in the lab till late at night again. Although watching Urban's TED Talk as an adult had for a moment made me feel that I hacked the problem of procrastination with my obsessive time optimization strategies, grad school has taught me that sometimes in life, you can just never get ahead. Whether it's school, work, family, friends, health, or finance-related tasks that you're trying your best to time manage. It's easy to feel that no matter how hard you try at being ahead of the game in something, there are always going to be times where you'll still feel behind. Taking my experience as an example, I would like to share with you 2 paradoxes I have noticed in my efforts to be a non-procrastinator. Number 1, when I began rigidly emphasizing time management in one aspect of my life, which was school, I began to neglect various other priorities in life. Family, friends, health, and hobbies all went to the back burner for me, and these priorities received very little time to flourish from my efforts. And number 2, as I mentioned, there eventually came a point where no matter how hard I was working, it never felt like what I was doing was enough. Even if there were 200 hours in a day and I used every single one of them to do my schoolwork, I would probably still feel like I haven't done enough. Does this mean that no matter what, we are all doomed to be procrastinators? Perhaps the answer is yes. We must accept that we will never be the most ahead in anything. However, does this mean that our efforts to become non-procrastinators should be dismissed? The idea that eradicating procrastination from one's life may introduce more problems can be hard to digest, and strategizing as to how one could possibly ensure a balance between all their priorities in life is a complicated endeavor. However, I propose that it's not impossible. And no, I don't mean to spew idealistic nonsense. Let me explain. My idea for preventing the paradoxical rabbit hole of procrastination requires 3 simple strategies. Number 1, the priority grid. Instead of prioritizing tasks using a vertical model of priority, like a list, where one task is greater than the other in importance, my idea is to use a combination vertical and horizontal model to understand the importance of my tasks. Something like a Cartesian coordinate system. I call this a priority grid. Along the x-axis, I place only 5 priorities, or aspects of my life I find most important and deserving of my time. I say 5 because I don't want to make it too intimidating for myself, and I don't want to become discouraged if it becomes too difficult to follow. For each of these priorities, I will then list 2 to 3 simple ways I can work towards these priorities in the upcoming week. At the end of the week, I can evaluate how well I did at accomplishing my time management and distribution goals and working towards creating a balance in my life. Number 2, limit tasks. When I devote my time to a task that is not very time sensitive, yet is consuming most of my time, I need to deeply consider whether it may be beneficial to revisit the task at another time and use my time right now to work towards something else. Now, this can be really hard to do. For example, my years of dedicated prioritization of schoolwork have programmed me to feel most guilty when I'm putting off schoolwork compared to any other work in my life. So how can I address negative feelings like this so I can stay motivated to spend my time on other parts of my life? Strategy number 3 may have the answer to this. Practice regular reflection and compassionate self-talk. Both strategies 1 and 2 cannot work at their optimal until I create an inner dialogue where I am aware of my progress in tackling the paradoxes of procrastination. Am I spending enough time on all important aspects of my life? Am I accomplishing the goals I placed through the priority grid? Am I setting realistic goals for myself each week? These reflective questions are essential in continuing a healthy practice of priority making. When you teach a child a math concept, you give them a test to gain feedback on their true capabilities. Similarly, you may set goals for yourself, but you need to check in with yourself later on to ensure that those goals are truly realistic and optimal. If I realize I have set a goal for myself in 1 week that I was unable to achieve, my default tends to be guilting myself into feelings of worthlessness. However, in this instance, I'm not giving myself enough credit for my appeal to logic and reasoning, and I'm biased against myself. My conversations with myself should come from a place of true compassion and understanding, much like I'm inclined to demonstrate with other people rather than myself. Realistic and compassionate inner dialogue can help me talk myself down from inessential feelings of guilt to the realization that sometimes my expectations of myself are simply unfair. The more I can accept the incomplete tasks, the more comfortable I can get with devoting my time to various parts of my life that require my attention. A little tip: if you ever need help reasoning with yourself and determining how essential a task is to complete in the week, take out your priority grid and try to find the place for the task in the grid. Some tasks we think are important may end up placing much lower on the grid than we initially thought, and drawing this out may help remind you later on not to place too much importance on this aspect of your life. Procrastination in some things is inevitable, and I have to agree with Tim Urban when he said, "Everyone procrastinates at something." But when overachievers program themselves to solve the problem of procrastination,
Carl, it's just that sometimes it's a heavy burden being a man of science.
I know what you mean, Jimmy. That's why I decided early on to sabotage my highly scientific mind with cartoons and sugar.
they may just find themselves in a similar situation as I did, where they end up neglecting the other important aspects in their life. Soon, it becomes hard to give these aspects any importance at all because we've trained our emotions to find only one aspect of our life rewarding enough. When we take a step back and realize what we've been missing in life, it can feel like we're playing catch-up in everything else because we forgot to balance things along the way. This is the unfortunate paradox of procrastination. But I think if we were skillful enough to develop non-procrastinating habits to begin with, then we must be skillful enough to mend how we distribute our time management efforts across all aspects of our life, so that we may hopefully live much happier, fulfilling, and balanced lives.